Welcome, guys. We are back for another episode of The Lock-In. I'm already laughing. Our guest this week is going to be absolutely fantastic, I am sure. First of all, though, I am joined by my great friend, Dara O'Kearney. Dara, welcome.
Thank you very much, David. Delighted to be here. I think this is going to be an interesting episode because we're in 3 different time zones. So we're going to get people at 3 different parts of their day. I'm literally right out of bed. You're up a while, and our guest is at the end of his day.
He is indeed. Well, his name is Rob Campbell. He is the Australian mixed game specialist who probably rose to the most prominence in his career a couple of years ago when he managed to win the WSOP Player of the Year. Astonishing performance, pipping our good pal Daniel Negreanu in slightly unusual fashion. We talked about that on the show with him. Rob, back. Welcome back. Please come join us now and give us some funny, because you've been making us laugh off camera for the last good while. Or don't say nothing at all, Rob, and reveal that maybe there's a time lag.
I was fine. I just kept on reading. I'm on the Zoom meeting and it keeps on saying connection is unstable. I didn't know. Should I just start talking now? Was David still going with the introduction? Maybe Dara chimed in with something, like maybe he's like, I've just woken up. I didn't know what was happening. So I just wanted to make sure I'm here now, guys. I am at the end of my day, but I'm feeling pretty good. I just had a coffee. I don't drink many coffees. So I'm pretty excited. Dara, do you drink many coffees?
I drink many, many coffees, yeah. I've already had 2 coffees today. 2
strong ones?
Pretty strong, yeah. My wife is French, so she doesn't believe in me coffee.
Oh, I've been going to the fantastic French restaurant actually in Melbourne. I just want to give them a plug. This is not a paid partnership, but there's a great French restaurant in South Yarra in Melbourne called Francois, and it's the first time I've ever had snails in my life. Great, and what else I have? French fries. Yeah, well, that's what you have there.
Not really French though.
What French fries aren't French, you reckon?
No, they're Belgian.
Really?
Yeah, this is what my wife tells me. Yeah, they're definitely Belgian.
I just feel like that you wouldn't get that through many French people. They wouldn't be thrilled for you to. It's called French fries. They're called would you go so far as to say maybe they're Flemish, so they're like shared, or would you just be absolutely no Belgian?
Yeah, no, I presume it's the French part of Belgium. So sort of francophone, but not actually French.
Okay, for our usual listeners, welcome to the shittest ever episode of No Reservations.
Is that what the program? I thought it was. Right now. I thought the show was called The Lock-In.
Yeah, in fairness to Rob, we believe 2 viewers in Melbourne, so he can go to that restaurant now and tell them that he's given them their plug.
Well, look, I haven't been briefed on what we were supposed to talk about, so I just wanted to make sure my friends were happy. Also, I want to say that I've been going to the Easy Mart across the road from my building. I've quit 7-Eleven. I'm done. Also, the Starbucks, because I've gone there multiple times, right? And I keep on saying, hey, can you put my stuff in a bag? And the last 2 times, it wasn't in a bag. And I had, just hear this, Dara, right? So I got, if you ordered this, what do you think should happen at a Starbucks? 1 muffin, right? 1 focaccia, which is a sandwich, and a tea, like for takeaway. Would you expect that to be in a bag?
No.
You've ruined the bit.
I'll have a go. Yeah, I'd expect that to be in a bag.
Oh, yes. Anyway, basically, I've been putting it in a bag and then I put the berries in there as well. So it's been good. Yeah, that was just my day.
Rob, we spoke before the show began about how Dara and I, you qualified us as Irish funny and poker funny, but you're funny, except for that story. I got to say, I don't think you quite the punchline.
Some of the stories are good and some of them are bad. You can't win them all. But I have been seeing some pretty funny people lately, like proper funny. Because we just had Melbourne International Comedy Festival.
All right.
Sorry, that's the sound in the background of my script being shredded, because clearly this is just gone.
We're just going to talk about Melbourne things first.
Well, no, but this is serious. Like, this is a big international event, right? Like Melbourne International Comedy Festival. I saw Ross Noble. You guys surely know him, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's amazing. He was so funny. I saw him twice.
Mm-hmm.
I can already see the YouTube comments on this episode. It's going to be best episode ever from Melbourne Tommy. Brilliant episode from Melbourne, Andy. And then it's just going to be a sea of like, what the fuck was that?
Well, Melbourne International Comedy Festival. This is what one of the comedians actually said was it's the #1 comedy festival in the world this year, right? Because, Edinburgh. Well, that's a funny thing too. I've been calling it Edinburgh. My friend corrected me actually last week. Yeah, I've been saying Edinburgh. I was like, man, I wish I could go to Edinburgh Comedy Festival. And he's like, what are you talking about? I go, Edinburgh. And he's like, nah, look, it's Edinburgh. And I'm like, I had no idea. Like my whole life. I was even doing comedy when I was 18, saying one day I wish I could go to Edinburgh. It's not the case. But basically, I went to a gig, and one of the gigs was, what would you do in this situation? So we've all just had a quick drink before we go into the comedy. And my friend, who just done his ACL like 1 week before, starts falling forward. He drops his beer, and I was like, oh, no, a 9:30 hero. And then he starts lunging forward, and his knee hits the ground, and then his head hits the ground.
Ooh, that's rough.
That is rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm dragging us back. Dara. Okay, we're going to try and get through this hour and not make it 2 hours.
Take control, David.
First topic up, high stakes pro and friend of the show, it must be said, Patrick Leonard, tweeted in the wee hours of this morning, hey, Pokerstars, I think there's a chance you added 30 points for my 13th place in 1K tournament, which shouldn't count because I bubbled. I don't want to win undeservingly, even though second gets 0. Is Zappa, that was his sort of opponent in the run-in, the rightful winner? I want him to win if he is the rightful winner, but I think this may have happened. He then posted a screenshot basically showing that there was only a 20-point gap. And of course, he made the reference to 30 points. Now, I got to say, literally, as I'm actually grateful you now went on some weird tangent that I wasn't really listening to, I'm going to be honest, Rob, because it gave me a spare moment to go onto Twitter and find out that right now, this very minute as we are recording it, Patrick Leonard has taken to Twitter to reveal that, in fact, yes, there was actually a big miscalculation in the way they did the scoring by Pokerstars for the SCOOP leaderboard. He actually was 90 points short, so there was a bigger error in there somewhere. More will be revealed, I'm sure, on that. Now, it sort of creates a weird situation, very similar to one you're very familiar with, Rob, which is that from Patrick's point of view, he would have approached the last day and maybe even the last couple of days completely differently had he known he had to catch people. But in fact, it's actually, ended up in a spot where this guy, Zappa, a Russian player, has pipped him by the scoreboard. It's really frustrating, obviously, when you don't know what you're going for on the last day, as you know only too well. Can you tell us about your famous story of this nature and maybe how you could sympathize with these people?
Patrick Leonard. Patrick Leonard. I actually know that guy. Like, I'm not a big Twitterer. I mean, sometimes I tweet, but I recently unfollowed Patrick because he tweets so much. Just wanted to put that out there. Like, I find there's a few guys, they tweet so much, you got to unfollow them, and you still see them in your feed a ton. So that's just a bit of feedback for anyone who's a bit tired of poker Twitter. Take that handy hip, bit of life advice. No offense to Patrick. I'm sure he's a lovely fellow. So
right. So the actual question.
What should Patrick do in this situation? Look,
or just how much do you sympathize with that scenario? Obviously, you're kind of the Zappa in that situation. You sort of found out when you were like your plane was landing in a different country that you'd actually pipped Negreanu in the end. But he, of course, would have approached the last days differently for that reason.
So Zappa won, right?
Correct.
Or he lost. Right. Yeah, I mean, and Patrick was announced the winner.
Patrick was announced the winner, and he spotted what he thought was a different clerical error on Star's part, so alerted them to do a recount for that reason, which actually has now alerted them to a bigger clerical error that they've made.
Oh, gee. I mean, without knowing all the details, first of all, you got to say absolutely kudos to Patrick Leonard. Right, that's a real stand-up guy, and you got to really respect a man who's going to go and do that sort of thing. Or
you might even refollow him on Twitter.
He doesn't need to refollow him, David.
Yeah, I will actually. I'll do it right now.
So Patrick Leonard, 25k worst off. God knows
look,
how
I
many
just followed him.
Side bets, but
he's even going to see this.
The Rob Campbell follow. Okay, that's good.
But he did, and he's got a. But I like him even more now. I mean, I didn't not like him. I was neutral, But now I'm a big fan. What would I say to Patrick Leonard? Look, mate, it's just, to be honest, it's just one of those shit things. Like it's sort of like a referee decision. You can't say, oh, I lost the World Cup because of a referee decision. Sometimes these things happen. That's how I sort of would have thought about it. Like, of course, you feel really hard done by, like, if you found out, you would have changed and you could have done this and you could have done that. But the reality is everyone would have played differently.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I don't know if I said this last time, but I don't want to name any names. But, I mean, it's kind of easy to guess because it's like, could be only one person. But when I was declared the winner, someone said to me, they were like, it was such a schmozzle. And we came, we should be joint winners. Okay. And, because we all would have played differently. And I just said, nah, man. I mean, I didn't really say it like that, but that's really what I was saying. Like, nah.
Like, I'm the actual winner here.
Yeah, like you can't, because I would have been completely different too, right? Like, everyone's going to be different, and that's the thing. How can you retrospectively say it? I mean, it's like kind of like VAR since they brought that into football. I mean, soccer, whatever you want to call it, depending on where you are in the world. But like that changes a big part of the game. Certainly like can really change huge results all the time. So I don't see and players don't like leave, like, you could win or you could lose a game and that could change someone's whole career, right? A coach could end up being fired because of that loss. Players could lose their jobs. Whole staffs could be changed. Maybe teams could be relegated. Who knows? And no one ever turns around and says, oh yeah, well, it was that one thing. Like, remember these tournament series, it's like thousands, perhaps even millions of decisions. Like just because a few at the end, could have been a bit different. You can't isolate and like blame or change. It's just one of those things. And I do think they should be corrected. I'm for VAR, I guess, if you will, which is what we're talking about in this case. Like Stars have gone back and retrospectively changed the scoring. But yeah, I feel like I'm talking too long, and this can't possibly be interesting.
No, but it's a wonderful opportunity for us to actually coincidentally speak to the one person who's probably run through all the permutations and ways in which and angles in which you could even interpret this whole situation. It's great to have you on to get that perspective. Turning back to the sportsmanship side of it, Dara, because I think that's one thing that really shines through here, regardless of money won and outcomes and whatnot. You come from the running world, and the running world, while obviously there are running cheats and they unfortunately get way too much of the press, it is a very honorable space, and there are a number of famous examples of really good sportsmanship in that world, and it feels like Patrick's done something like that.
Yeah, I think I always think there is a contrast between my former world, the running world, and poker world. Now, that's not to say that everybody in poker is a cheat and everybody in running isn't. Obviously, there are some very high-profile cheats in running too, but the way the running community treats them is very, very different from poker. In poker, a lot of the time, it's just sort of brushed under the carpet, or but in running, you are a total persona non gratis once you're exposed. I think it's maybe significant too that Patrick does come from a sporting background as well. He played football at a pretty high level, and he's still very passionate about football. I think in poker, you do often see that people can view the same thing very differently. Some people kind of view it as a sport, and not just in the sense of their approach to it, but also the ethics around it. Other people see it just purely as a maximize your EV in every single spot, almost like an investment. And that can lead to sort of like shady practices where people think, well, this is going to make more money for me, so I'm going to do it. So I think that's something as well. You do see a lot of people in poker who come from a sporting background, because I think that sort of approach to something like poker, very, very disciplined, focusing on what you can control yourself, all the mindset stuff that top class sports people tend to have, translates very well into poker. So I do think there's like a cultural clash within poker sometimes between the people who do see it as a sport and everybody has to, be sporting and act fair, and the people who are just sort of like, well, we'd all do it if we could get away with it.
Yeah, well said. I suppose, on behalf of everyone on this show, a tip of the cap to you, Patrick, if you're out there.
Yeah, tremendously sporting by Patrick, it has to be said. I mean, he really deserves all the credit for this. It's an example of he's a genuine role model, and he has been, for as long as he's become a public figure.
Absolutely. Actually, he's actually just messaged me a little quote. So I suppose again, it's all happening in real time. It's unusual for this show, but I may as well read it. He said, "We both went 100% at this. Trust me, I wanted to win so bad. I would have bluffed my mum, fist pump, one-outered my dad. But if I want to win, I want to win fairly." So I guess that really does sort of sum it up, and fair play to him on all of that. We come now to, I suppose, the other scoop story that, caught some headlines.
I'm just writing Patrick a tweet right now, actually, Dara. And
it's good.
I'm just going to write him, you are a good person, Patrick.
Okay.
And what do you think, Smiley? Do you think smiley face or not smiley face?
It's like
smiley face might
maybe.
seem sarcastic. Sorry, smiley face might seem sarcastic.
Okay, so just a little smiley face. Oh, no smiley face.
No smiley face, just straight.
No smile. Okay, straight. Let's go. No, I didn't do any punctuation.
Good.
Right.
Yeah, no,
there we go.
Confuse the situation. Okay, moving on. The other great story this week was that of our good friend Fintan Hand, fellow Irishman, who had a phenomenal result in the 5200 PKO last.
I also had an incident with him too.
Okay,
I'll
pipe down, settle down till it's your turn.
Somebody turn it
first. So this is serious.
Okay, we will come to it. So after running like God on the Thursday night, Finton ran up a huge stack and made the final table 3 of 9. It was a stacked final table with Limitless, Bowie Effects, that's Andy Wilson, Thomas Mulocker, and Jarrett East. They were all in attendance. Finton eliminated Malinowski early doors and then did a bit of laddering, fell right back, ended up really short with 3 left, but then beasted back, a couple of strokes of good fortune in there as well to ultimately win heads up for 232k, literally 6 seconds before the power in his building went out. Wild drama. It meant that we watching it on stream couldn't actually watch the very final hands. We had to switch over to the Pokerstars channel to watch it there, but we did get to see Finton win in the end. Firstly, Dara, we have known Finton since he was a poker dealer. We followed his progress as a sit-and-go grinder. We celebrated his early adoption to Twitch with an interview with him on, I think, our second or third ever episode of the Chip Race back in 2015. Since then, he has grown his audience. He has made the final table of the Irish Open, which you commentated on. He has been signed by Pokerstars in 2017, and he's now one of the top 3 or 4 Twitchers out there in poker. What did you make of this phenomenal result?
First of all, you're right. We have followed him from the beginning, and Finton is a guy who sort of got there just to sheer graft. He's really, really worked hard on the Twitch. I remember when I suggested to you during our first season we should get on Fintan Hand, who we knew through Kevin Killeen, his best friend, who we were staking at the time, because he's getting big on Twitch. Your exact words were, "What is Twitch?" So it was quite early days in Twitch, at least for poker Twitch. It's been incredible to see his ascent. He rose he rose to the ranks on Twitch very, very quickly. It's fair to be said. He did establish himself very quickly, but like a lot of the top poker Twitchers, his poker game probably wasn't taken too seriously. There used to be this view that if you could do one or the other, you could be a top poker Twitcher or you could be a top poker player, but not both, because the Twitch thing was so intensive. But we've actually seen that change in maybe the last 18 months. I don't know whether it's a product of lockdown, meaning everybody has more time to spend at home with the solvers or getting coaching, but we have seen players like Finton actually raise their game up to the level where now Finton is a genuinely top class player. The same is true of Kevin Martin, who we had on the show recently, and a few of the other poker Twitchers have actually really come on, and now you have to say they're top class, which is interesting, because instead of the poker viewers watching somebody who isn't very good at poker but's entertaining, now people can actually watch somebody who's both, is very, very good at poker and is entertaining. So that's the first aspect, I would say. Secondly, it's great to see Finton get the reward for the work he's put in, because he has put in a tremendous amount of work, I know, away from the tables. He's gone off and got coaching. He's been in the lab basically. So I think it's great that is a great example for anybody out there, that if you work really, really hard in the long term, you will get the rewards. Finally, I would like to say, I believe that Fintan and his lovely girlfriend moved back to Ireland briefly during the pandemic, found it far too expensive and had to move back to Malta. So hopefully they'll be able to afford to move back to Ireland now if they want.
Ireland is ridiculously expensive, and I did meet him. It was mostly internet issues, actually, in Ranelagh of all places in Dublin, that he just couldn't get back online. It's why he was sort of not online for a month, and I know he was obviously trying to buy a house in Dublin. I'm sure he'll be buying a bigger one now. But no, we're delighted for him. He actually followed up that result with the 4th place finish in the 2K PKO just a few days later for 50 grand. So nice little cherry on top of the already very nice cake he had won himself over the series. We are obviously delighted from here at the show. Rob Campbell, I want to bring you in on this because 1, you can't play Scoop because of the laws as they are now in Australia, and 2, I want to know what you were going to interrupt me and say about how you know Finton.
Oh, look, yeah, we haven't been able to play Scoop for, I don't know, whenever it became illegal. And I never really played Scoop either because it's horrific times. I don't want to wake up, and awful. But I did play a bit of cash game during Scoop. There was always some pretty good cash games, obviously. All right, yeah, and about Finton. So this is interesting because it ties into the story I was telling you earlier about that French restaurant. So I've been to that French restaurant.
Oh my God.
And I'd enjoyed it. No, it's true. This is really what you've done. And so I've come home and I've said to myself, I wouldn't mind watching some Twitch because I almost never watch Twitch, like never, ever, ever. So what do? Oh, I watch Twitch for like Dota 2, but I never watch poker Twitch. But I just had this feeling I wanted to do poker. So I click it on, and who was the number 1 streamer? Big shout out, your man Finton, right? And I remember because he was like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. He's got an Irish accent. And I think I'd had 2 glasses of wine. Like, I'm not drunk. And I just thought, you know what? I just want to give back to the community. If I feel like this guy makes a mistake, I'll review one of his hands for him, because I've had a fair bit of high stakes poker coaching from, Cale Burns, 100K level, like, top world class. So I wrote to him, I said, after there was 5 or 6 hands in, I wrote, turn sizing is grim. You should look to be potting or betting small there. And if you don't, you can shove river. And then I said, go easy. I'm a first time Twitcher or something. And then I said, I don't want to upset you. Anyway, it takes a long time for him to get the chat.
5 minutes later.
5 minutes later, I get blocked. It's off the screen. And I was like, what's going on? Why would he do this?
Yeah.
Well,
and a bunch of guys complaining.
Yeah.
Guys complained in the chat. They were like, why would you kick that guy off? And he goes, well, he's a beginner, and he's talking to me, trying to tell me how to play hands. That advice was woeful. I'm not going to listen to this beginners. People should be asking me the questions. And I'm thinking, jeepers, buddy, this was some serious advice. This is some really good players have told me to do this. So yeah, look, anyway, but I'm sure he's a lovely bloke. And I didn't care at all. I can understand. I'm sure he gets peanuts just saying all kinds of dumb stuff in the box nonstop all day. So he's just reading it's like, get out of here. Yeah. But really, it was me. It was me after the French restaurant.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. See, the background here is that the Twitchers do have to put up. There's even a term for this. They're referred to as chat pros. They're the guys who play free rolls, but know the right thing to do in every spot. And every time you lose a hand, they tell you what you should have done differently. You should have shoved the turn. He would have folded then, or whatever. So it's always nonsense advice. So he can't distinguish you from a sea of these people. And then suddenly, this new name appears, telling him his turn sizing is grim, and he's like, "Oh God, this is another chat pro."
Well, he won the hand, right? I wasn't ragging. I was just saying how we could have got more. I don't know, whatever.
Well, I'm sure he'll watch this episode, realize his mistake, unblock you, so that the next time you get semi-drunk after a French meal, you can go back on his stream and maybe offer him some further advice.
Yeah, Fintan needs to be made aware that Rob has had coach, but he is aware now that Rob has had coach from Cale Burns. He's not just like a mixed game donkey who doesn't know anything about Hold'em.
And also, Dara, not only that, but he's actually been trained by DTO, which of course we use an awful lot as well. And
Who has
rate
me?
that as one of the best poker trainers out there. It's actually the best poker trainer out there. And that's Dominic Nietzsche's brain and, solvers going into all that technology. So maybe that's better than you and Kale. I don't know, Rob. I'm just
look. I don't lump Kale in with me, man. Like, for all I know, I could have been horribly wrong, right? I just remember looking at a stack, going, and then just wanted to give a little bit of feedback. Like, it could have been a travesty. Like, I maybe Fintan will even have the hand history, and we can have a big Twitter fight about it. But
that would be nice. Yeah, I would love to see that follow up. That would,
whatever. What I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to hold this microphone up correctly. That's
I appreciate how ridiculous you look. It's absolutely insane how you as somebody who has a podcast don't have a standalone quality mic, and you're using what I assume are like earbuds with the little phone attachment to it. And this is actually, you told us how you record your own show, so that's pathetic.
We did during lockdown, but we actually have a studio because my partner Angus, he works in breakfast radio.
Oh, well, he's proper then. He's the real deal.
Yeah,
anyway, look, I promise we will get back to your show because I am very keen to ask you.
No, don't worry about it.
I have one more area, or maybe two before we get to that.
For sure.
Dara, the thing I'm really keen to talk about now is series fatigue. It's a real thing. It has been an insane few months. The Unibet online series culminated with the Unibet Open. It feels like a month ago. That was solid 3 weeks of grind for us. Then straight into the Irish Poker Open. Then straight into a combination of Powerfest, GG Series, Scoop. How much are you suffering from series fatigue, and how much are you giving yourself a little break this week?
Oh, I was going up the walls at the end of last week. I was literally counting down the days, telling my wife how many days it would be until she would actually see me properly, rather than the last month where she's just seen me get up, go into the room and start playing. Yeah, it's been mental with all the series. We did sort of slip into this, online poker almost became like live poker, where it's built around series. So you go to a series, then you have a break, you go to another series, etc., etc. But now recently it seems like the breaks part isn't happening. As soon as one series ends, another one is starting. And actually there is another one starting this weekend. I'm not going to mention it because it is one of our competitors, but you can literally play almost non-stop now if you want. I wanted to take Monday off, but I ended up playing because I made a couple of day twos and then doing a full session. So Tuesday was my first day off, I think, in about 7 weeks maybe. So yeah, I'm taking 3 days off, and then I'm going to go back playing again on Friday. It's been a real case of fatigue. I've never actually felt as burned out as I did at the end of Sunday, actually. And I'm just really looking forward to not having to play every day.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest, I wasn't putting in the grind on the tables you were, but it never stops these few weeks every year, I guess. And it just seems like in lockdown, that's been, multiplied by I don't know what. But anyway, look, it is nice that we now have a bit of time to focus on some content like today. We obviously, in the middle of all of that, managed to get out our 100th episode, which was very well received. It starred Doug Polk, Annette O'Carroll and Ape Styles. And I'm delighted to say that a lot of warm comments have come in, which we appreciate. Anyone who took the time to send us a message. We
Sorry, before you go on, also, you forgot one name, and also starred Brad Wilson, who sent in the longest question ever, and I think took about 20 minutes of our show with his question.
Yeah, no, that was very skillful by some of the phone-in other podcasters who haven't been on the chip race. The cheek of him, he hasn't even been on as a proper guest, wanted to try and dominate the show. But anyway, now, much love to Brad. We will have you on soon. I know we keep promising this, but, someday we will actually do it. I want to say as well, we managed to have a very successful poker tournament on Unibet Poker, $100 PKO. Euro PKO, which gave away loads of free prizes. It was to celebrate the 100th show. And one of those free prizes, Dara, was everyone who cashed got a copy of PKO Poker Strategy. You cashed and won a copy of your own book. Can you tell us what happened right after you got the email?
Yeah, I woke up, I think it was yesterday, and I went on to check my email, and I got this very official looking email from Andy Patton, our good friend who works in Unibet, saying you've won a bonus prize. And I thought, oh, this is wonderful. What have I won? So I opened up the email and it says, congratulations, as one of the cashers in the Chip Race 100th tournament, you have won an ebook version of PKO Poker Strategy by Dara O'Carney and Barry.
Very good.
So yeah, I did. I don't know if I'm the first person ever to win a copy of their own book. It's a weird feeling. I have to say. I did put it immediately on Twitter, and to my absolute delight, somebody went to the trouble of typing in the link from the screenshot and downloading the book before I could download it. So my free book was stolen off of somebody who really wanted the book so badly.
Your free book was stolen. That's
So they were actually willing to. I said this to Josh Abity, who we had on the show too, and Josh Abity said, "I wouldn't do that for $1 million prize. Type in every individual character into my browser." So fair play to the guy who did it for the ebook that's worth $7.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because when Joe Hasham brought his book to our home game, he brought it 10 copies, so one for everyone in the game. And at the end of the game, somehow 11 copies were still just there on the table.
People saw the opportunity to offer.
One person stuck one back in. No, that's a joke. I've got the book. I've got the book at home.
Okay. Well, speaking of content creation, Rob, a couple of years ago, you've mentioned a few times now, you launched your own podcast with Angus O'Loughlin, the podcast. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You made a season of 13 shows between November 2019 and March 2020.
12.
It said 13 on my podcast thing.
12 and a COVID special, like Christmas special, but it was COVID.
COVID special. Okay, very good. Yeah. And then you returned.
What do you think of that name?
Yeah, I didn't like never was a fan of the name if I have to be put on the spot now. But look, it's a play on words. Yeah, you could have done better. Anyway, last September.
It wasn't me.
Last September, you came back. And so far in season 2, you've put out 8 shows. Congratulations on that. It's great to be brought back for a second season. It took us long enough to get to that place, I will admit. But it is a fantastic show, and your stand-up comedy roots shine through at all times. Rob, we often talk about how in the saturated poker podcast space, I'm going to read my question now because I'm getting too giddy with having you on the show. You need a strong concept to stand out. What would you say is your strong concept, and can you talk us through how the show has developed over the last couple of years?
Strong concept. Have you heard the show?
I have heard the show, yeah, and that's why I really wanted an answer to this.
Basically, what we do, look, I don't think we've got some sort of secret recipe. I think we're just doing. We did hand histories.
Classic.
Aim, because we're aiming at. I think we aim at a demographic of players very different to most poker shows. We're really just going for the every person. The person who plays the pub poker, person who plays with their family. That's really that's where we're aiming the hand histories at. Like, we're mainly talking about Angus's hand histories. Only recently have we started to go a bit more in depth with those. Whoa. And then with the interviews, we did all the, a lot of Australian guys. And then this year we did a lot more international guys. I mean, for me, I personally find interviewing is the really, I find it very fun and more interesting. For me, I really like just to talk to people. Obviously, I don't, when I'm interviewing, I'm a bit more trying to be a bit more excitable in this interview. This is usually the level I'm at in my own, because I'm more, I guess your role, the more stable.
Are you calling Dara unstable?
No, he's good too. You're both good. It's not a review. You guys are one of the premier ones. You're a really great program. But we're just, I feel it is really hard. I mean, I can understand. I see it as well in other shows where you're interviewing gamers. Getting something out of them is not always easy. And even when they're really interesting and engaging on the table, once you've got them in the studio, sometimes it's and then you think you're going to have this great story, and then they go into it, and then it just doesn't translate very well. And it's this is a bit, and then they can drag on. They could be like me at the start of this show, 2 jokes, lots of energy, just sucks.
Yeah, it was exactly what I was thinking.
Right. It's hard. It's really tough.
It is tough. You've had a lot of top line guests on, it must be said, particularly in the kind of latter half of those 21 shows. Jungle Man, pretty cool. Jack Sinclair, Rainer Kempe, James Obst, Daniel Negreanu, and Aussie's Joe Hasham, and your good pal Cale Burns. Any interviews out of them that particularly stood out for you?
I mean, personally, I really enjoyed interviewing Dan Cates, because I'm friends with him, and he's just off the wall. And I felt like I was very proud of it because I felt like I could get a lot more out of him. Then I think, I mean, I don't know what other people get out of him, but I just know that he's pretty. Even to get him on the show was so hard. I remember I was trying to get him on the show, and I said, "Hey, Dan, you reckon you can do it on Monday?" And he's like, "I can't. I'm looking at lions in Zanzibar." I'm like, "Is that the stupidest excuse I've ever heard? Like, just tell me you're washing your hair, man." And then I check his Instagram the next week, and there he is, petting lions in Zanzibar. What is this guy? Anyway, so it was great to get him on the program.
Well, Dara, you actually booked Dan for us when we had him on, I want to say about a year and a half ago. And you similarly had a tough time pinning him down. It
was really, really difficult. Yeah. First of all, I want to say the contact was made through Warren Lush, who has helped the show out a lot behind the scenes, getting that type of guests. He also got us Phil Helmut back in the day. So shout out to Warren. But yeah, Dan was incredibly idiosyncratic, let's say, to deal with. First of all, it was very hard to pin him down on an exact day or time. I would say, like, how does Tuesday at 4 work? And he would say, maybe Tuesday 4:30 is better. And I would say, okay, that we can make that work. And then he'd say, maybe 4:15 actually is better. We went back.
It'd probably go, and it'd be like 4:15.
So we did eventually set a date and time, and then I remember it was a really weird time. It was like 5:22 or something. So it was very, very specific. So we made sure we were there on time. We started the interview. It sounded like there was a lady singing opera right over his shoulder. The sound quality was horrendous. So we asked him, like, Dan, what's the story here? We can't hear you. We could just hear this opera singing. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm in a cafe or something. I might need to move. So we said, yeah, could you please move, Dan? And he sent me a message saying, yeah, ring me back in 9 minutes. Again, very, very specific, 9 minutes. He'd worked out exactly how long it was going to take him to move. He was also very, very adamant that we had to ring him rather than the other way around because he didn't want to use his points, as he called it, whatever that meant. So we did play along with that. Yeah, so it was definitely one of the most eccentric, idiosyncratic setups. Yeah. But he was wonderful when we got him, obviously.
He was amazing, but we did have to pony up, I think, about like $4.20 for the Skype call or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, that's what, I mean, I've heard that, Dan is, that must have been a little while ago. I think he's getting more not like that every year. I remember I heard stories back in the day. There was a guy who had soap. Don't ask me why, but this is a guy had soap and like watching television and, like soap in it, you could possibly mistake it as a chocolate bar, because it's wrapped in the same sort of tin foil. And for whatever reason, Dan snatched it off the guy and unwrapped it and then bit into it. I don't know.
So
True Jungle Man stories. All right.
That's when you want someone like Rob railing on Twitch going like, that was a bit grim. You might need to rethink your strategy there.
Oh, yeah. Chat Pro. That's a term. See, Chat Pro.
Yeah, you need to change your Twitch handle now to Chat Pro Rob Campbell.
I've changed it enough times. I was Sonic Jacks 2019, and then I was trying to be Aussie Rob Poker, and then I was like, that's too much like Aussie Matt, So I just want to be Rob C Poker now. Yeah.
So I did notice when I was looking for your recent tweets that your name had changed, which brings me very neatly. See, that's a professional segue I just did there to a recent tweet of yours, Rob. You tweeted, while the bushfires, pandemic, market crash and lockdowns led to frustration and sadness, I feel the introspection and corresponding learning created an overall positive experience for 2020. So, you tweeted that around New Year's, and I guess it was striking that you were somebody clearly maybe of a positive mindset generally, who was looking for the silver linings, was looking for the opportunities in the pandemic and, the situation that it created for most people being stuck maybe in one place or what have you. Can you elaborate on that and whether 2021 is sort of similar for you so far?
Sure. It's very interesting that you guys found that tweet. I didn't think anyone gave a toss about that one.
No, they didn't. It had I think it had no likes. I think I was the only person to ever read that actually.
Yeah. Look, I mean, in Australia, I think it was I don't know what it's been like for you guys over there, but we had like probably one of the strictest lockdowns in the world. I was in the city, and for about 7 months of last year, we weren't allowed to be more than 5 kilometers from our house, and we had a 9 p.m. curfew. It was to the point where you were only allowed outside or to exercise like 1 hour outside, right? So if I walked up to my local park, um, there was always, the park is, reasonably large. It's like, about, let's say 10 football ovals maybe in size or something. There was always a patrol of 2 policemen walking around with 2 military officers, right? And you couldn't just be lingering. Like once I'd probably been in the park, I'd been a bit naughty that day and I'd done 3 laps. So I might have been out for 2 hours and I was sitting on the chair and the policeman came over and he said, "Are you all right, mate?" And I was like, And then they want to check up on you. I'm not saying like that's wrong or it's right, but I'm just saying like people who are aware that you've been outside a little bit too long and things like that. It was very strict. So where am I going with this tale? Well, I think spending that much time pretty much on your own and in isolation and doing the same thing every day, which was, I was doing a lot of, online work, but I was spending a lot of time on my own exercising, that sort of stuff. Just gives you a lot of time to sort of think, what you want to do in your life, things you might want to sort of sort out. But the big thing I got out of it was streamlining my life. Without going into too much detail, like just trying to fix all that niggling crap that you haven't done. And unfortunately, I didn't get as much done as I would have liked, but at least I have a good idea of what I want to do.
That's well said. I'm reminded now at some level by a great tweet from early on in the pandemic by our good pal Barney Boatman, who said something like, "I've just discovered that all those books that I always wanted to read were books that I always wanted to read."
I mean, yeah,
we don't quite do it all, but it's great that you did a decent chunk, and I get your point about streamlining, because this is something Dara keeps reminding me of in a mean-spirited way, because Dara likes to poke fun at me, but he says to me that you do realize, David, that before we went into lockdown and after we come out of lockdown, that basically sort of marks a very big turning point in your life as an adult, and basically your life's sort of over now. You have to become a domesticated creature. You probably won't be going out on the road anymore, which has made me feel very sad, because I am hoping to do some traveling when it all ends. But Dara, you have talked in a more serious way about just generally how this opportunity to maybe reset our lives or sort of, rebalance our lives means that, like, moving forward, a lot of people won't go straight back to the life choices they made before. They may keep some of the pandemic life as part and parcel of how they want to move forward.
Yeah, there's a couple of aspects to this. I have seen different people that I know, people that I work with, friends, etc., react very, very differently to the pandemic. And I'm hesitant to go too much into this because it sounds like I'm judging the people who've basically sat on the couch for the last 12 months and felt sorry for themselves. But certainly I have noticed a difference. For example, a lot of the recreational players that I coach, they have found other outlets to basically put their efforts into, and a lot of them have actually put a lot of effort into getting better at poker, and also played a lot more online, which is something they never did. They tended to be live recreational players, and I do think one of the effects is we are going to see a lot of these people suddenly come back after when live comes back, and they're going to be way better than they were before. It's going to be a huge shock, I think, to a lot of pros who maybe took this year off, the live pros particularly, and didn't play that much. And they're going to suddenly face this new wave of players who actually have put in decent volume online, have studied, have watched lots of videos, etc. So I think that's one aspect to it. I mean, we had a phone conversation yesterday where you were talking about all the live stops you were going to go to, and you said, "Oh, I'm going to go back to doing what I was before." It's not so much the pandemic in your case. I think it's more the case that you now have a young son and you don't necessarily want to spend 32 weeks a year or whatever it was away. I'm kind of in a similar thing. I am looking forward to live poker coming back, but I don't want to go back to doing what I did before, which was traveling every month to a live event. I have actually enjoyed the sort of pause and the period at home to do the stuff. And people have asked me, like, how have you kept yourself occupied during the year? Non-poker people mostly. And I've said this has actually been the busiest year of my life, because the live trips generally tend to act as a sort of a break for me, where I go away and I'm obviously still playing a bit of poker, but you're one tabling, so it's not as intensive.
Yeah, no, I totally feel where you're coming from. Rob, do you feel like you're going to head out to the World Series, say, assuming that that's going ahead, and
No, we can't leave.
No, you can't. You can't leave in 6 months' time, or in whatever 5 months' time.
Not. I mean, I couldn't. I wanted to go with Neon to the Singapore Major, which was like huge international tournament with like really strict health regulations, because Singapore, and I didn't get approval.
Oh, wow.
And I definitely don't. I mean, we're not even allowed to. We couldn't have state lockdowns. I had no idea that states were this powerful in Australia. Like, we can have just statewide lockdowns, like 48 hours notice and things like that, and it's happened multiple times. But I'll be going on my first trip in mid-May. I'll be going, hopefully no breaks to WPT Gold Coast. But other than that, like, no, I don't think it's realistic that I'd be going to the World Series of Poker this year. Possibly, but look, I'm not holding my breath. But on that, what Dara did say about recreational players improving, definitely, I've seen that myself. Because and I'm sure you guys have talked about this many times, but like, I think recreational players, especially at like high stakes, they're usually pretty switched on guys, right? Yep. And they're playing for fun, and they're not. And if they decide, I'm going to put a little bit of effort into getting better, they usually get better pretty fast.
Yep.
And I've seen that with myself in the games I play in, like, and it's a real thing. And if these pros or whatever they're doing, if they're like being lazy, I think they are. You're 100% on the money. They're in for a rude awakening.
Yeah, I'm reminded too. I did want to give a shout out to our mutual friend, actually, Jan Sukanik, great guy, and I know Jan loves his shout outs. So Jan, this is your monthly shout out on the lock-in. But
is he paying us for these shout outs yet?
I did actually want to say I'm impressed how fit Rob looks. The last time I saw Rob in person, I think he was eating a hot dog in the company of Jan, or at least Jan was eating the hot dog.
We ate a lot of hot dogs, Jan and I. The World Series of Poker.
In the Rio at the World Series. I'm sad to hear you're not going.
This is the euphemism now, is it? These are real hot dogs we're talking about, just to.
Well, I can remember we ate so many hot dogs at the World Series of Poker in 2019 that when we discovered there was another hot dog vendor in the cash game area of the Rio, and they had like pickles, we were like literally jubilant for at least 2 hours, and we went there nonstop. And we took pictures of the hot dogs with different sauce designs.
Okay, that's far. That's plenty of hot dog pickle talk, Dara. I think you have to make.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, what'd you say, David?
Yeah, I think you were going to make a point that Jan had said something inspirational or maybe mildly amusing.
No. When has Jan ever said anything inspirational or even mildly
it was only a reference. It was only to bring us back to the hot dog story. Okay,
he's just a nice guy. No, I just thought of Jan because the last time I saw Rob, he was literally standing. I think beside that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I was looking bad. No, I'm fit because I'm training for a boxing fight.
Ooh,
an amateur box. So I'll tell you how this started. Right now, I didn't think we were going to keep on talking. How much do we have? Too much time? I'll try and be fast.
It's open ended.
So basically, right. So I'm playing with a private game, and it's the end of the session. Let's say just 2-3 a.m. Right. So I walk out of the bathroom, and as you do, I've done boxing back in the day. I punch in the air, a few shadow boxes, and this big Italian bloke says to me, "Those are shit punches. They got nothing on them." And I'm thinking, it's 3 a.m. I'm punching after I came out of the urinal. Who gives a fuck? I mean, and I turn to him, I go,
well, it looks like we may have lost Rob. He was saying he had one bar at the beginning, so maybe that one bar has slipped away, or maybe we just, Dara, might we have just pushed it too far here, and allowed Rob one more indulgent story, and the internet decided that no, that's enough. We've had enough of him.
Yeah, maybe there is like an unseen, unknown internet moderator who, in the same way that Rob got banned on Twitch for saying something sensible to Finton. I mean, maybe the irony here is this was actually going to be the best story, and similarly, I mean, we had this before. Obviously, Gareth Chandler just completely disappeared. We believed he was probably kidnapped at the end of the lock-in, and now he's completely gone. So
we hope that he's going to call back into the show. But look, in case he doesn't, what we will do is, because we're professionals on this show, is we're going to segue seamlessly to your strategy nugget, Dara. The good news is you don't have Chat Pro to start shouting about how your strategy is shit and you're wrong. So that's a good thing. And now, without Rob Campbell's interruptions, Dara, you may present your strategy nugget of the week.
Yeah, I must admit, because I'm straight out of bed, not a massive amount of preparation has gone into this. So I'm literally just going to read my response to a question I was asked on Twitter. Somebody was playing, and Rob is going to be back, by the way, at the end of this strategy segment. Somebody asked me on Twitter, they said that they had qualified for a WSOP main event satellite, which was a sort of a result of doing well in the league. And the satellite is unusual in that they start really, really deep, 333 big blinds deep, and slow levels, 15 minutes. So he said, like, as an online player who's not used to playing with more than 100 big blinds, what sort of adjustments should he be making early on in a satellite, given those circumstances? So my advice was play very, very tight early on. That will not only keep you out of trouble, but when the stacks are deep, but also set up the tight image to maximize fold equity when the shove phase starts. In terms of the hands you do play early on, focus on hands that make the nuts a lot, like ace-x suited and jack-10 suited, and stay away from small pairs that can get set oversetted and easily dominated offsuit hands that can make costly second-best hands.
Yeah, great advice. I think that's a really good general lesson. Obviously, some people go the other way when they're really, really deep. They think, oh, I've got chips to splash around with now.
I think that's the biggest mistake people make. Yeah, they think they can get away with playing anything, which might be true if you're Caleb Burns or you play incredibly well post-flop. But for the average tournament donk who never has more than 100 big blinds, that is literally a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, the opportunity to make sort of 80 big blind mistakes on the river is very clear and present danger there. And no, it's a lovely succinct nugget, but that's great advice. We have Rob Campbell back. We believe he is back, and he will be able to continue his story where he left off. Go for it, Rob.
I would have just chimed in with a little bit of advice on that bit too. You said you're playing ultra deep satellites.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you just be a little bit looser when you're in late position and really tight in early position? It's pretty good sound stuff.
I think that's good advice if you're Rob Campbell. But if
all right. Anyway, I'll go back to my fighting story.
Who might make a mistake on that post flop? Probably not so good.
Cool magools. All right, so basically, I've come out of there, and the guy's criticised my shadow boxing technique, and he's a larger man, like he's pretty big. I'd say he's not healthiest. And I said, you don't have a minute in you, I said. And he goes, I'll give you and he said, and he's probably 170 kilograms. So he's about 100 kilograms larger than me. And he said, I'll give you a flogging. And I said, come on, man, that's enough of that. Anyway, so I go home. I see him the next week. I'm sitting in the one seat and I'm playing poker. And he says to me, get out of that seat, Rob. I want to play some poker. And I don't know, he's a lot bigger than me, but I wasn't having a bar of it that day. And I said, how about you sit behind me and learn how to play poker? Right? He didn't like that. So then he comes over and he leans over to me. He leans over in my ear and he says, I don't know, just something, I can't remember. And then I said, please, mate, come on, give it a rest. And then he said, I'll beat you with one hand. And I said, which hand? And he said, you choose. And I said, fine, your left hand. And then he said, done. And I said, 3 2-minute rounds, June 30th. So that's what I'm training for. That's how it is. That's what's happening.
Does his hand get tied behind his back? How does it get refereed?
No.
This is for protection, presumably.
He's allowed to defend with it. He's allowed to defend with it. Look,
but he can only throw it to left.
Yeah, I've exaggerated the animosity of the fight. We're good. We're friends, and it can't go too far, right? It's going to be,
What the southpaw is just going to catch you early, and that's the end of it, is it?
I mean, I guess that's what he thinks. Yeah, that's what he thinks. He thinks he's got a great. He said, this is what he said, quote unquote, I'm the fastest fat man you've ever seen.
It's
Will
the
it be
George Foreman.
televised
Yeah.
/ live streamed on Twitch?
It's the George
No,
Foreman.
definitely not.
I mean, George.
I don't.
Go on.
So yeah, I mean, look, that's why I'm probably looking a bit fitter. I'm basically, I mean, I don't know how many punches in the head I can take from a man of this size. I can't imagine many.
Dara, but Dara, you're being very kind there, man. You were about to give a little anecdote about how he was like Cassius Clay, I think.
Well, no, actually, George Foreman famously, George Foreman had one of the most bizarre careers ever. He came on the scene. He absolutely dominated. He knocked out all the top level fighters in 1 or 2 rounds. Then he lost the famous Rumble in the Jungle to Muhammad Ali, who was believed to be well past his prime at that point. One of the biggest upsets of all time. George then essentially retired prematurely in his mid-20s, came back in his 40s and won the world title again. In his late 40s, because he basically was just a huge man and he always had that puncher's chance. He just had to land one punch cleanly and the guy would go down. And that's essentially how he won the title. So I think you're being very optimistic, Rob, if you think you can survive even one punch from a much bigger man.
I'm not deluded at all. Like, I know it's going to hurt a lot. Like one jab from this guy, it's going to be a big jab.
Yeah.
And my plan is not to receive it.
Yeah, that's the best plan.
Where can the casual poker viewer tune in to watch you be?
Nah, you can't. There's none. You can't. Like, look, I'm training for it. It's really just an exercise in getting healthy. I mean, it's not going to be one of these. It's not one of these. No, it's not going to be like that. It's not a serious event like that Elky sort of stuff was.
Olivia Busquets versus Jesse Alvarado.
Yeah, that was a proper, that was serious business. This is just 2 Australians being a bit silly.
Okay. Well, on that sort of ominous note, we obviously do hope to have you back on the show healthy at some point.
Look, everyone will be all right.
But I have to do my usual thing here of keeping the lights on with a little advertisement for our sponsor, Unibet Poker, who have announced the biggest, actually, it's really exciting, the biggest actual tournament that they're going to ever have on their regular schedule. It will be a monthly tournament, the 40K Super Moon. 250 buy-in, progressive knockout 2-dayer, Dara, not dissimilar from the structure we created for the Chip Race 100 PKO. It will run monthly, first Sunday of the month, and it will begin on the 2nd of May. Don't tune in the 1st of May, it won't be there. 2nd of May will be the first one, and then every first Sunday of the month after that. It should be a bit of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I've already satellited into it, so I'll definitely be playing on Sunday. It's going to be a really good structure. Again, one of the things we've seen change over the course of the pandemic is there are more of these sort of like really well structured Sunday tournaments that are now 2 or 3 day events. Again, similar to a live event, rather than all being done and dusted in the same night. So yeah, this is a very good structure which does reward sort of the more skilled players.
Great stuff.
Yes, I've also satellited into it, and it's a fantastic structure.
Thank you, Rob, for playing along.
And before we go, I do also want to echo what David said. We wish Rob the very best of luck in his boxing fight. But if worst comes to the worst,
let's not focus on that. Like, I'm a person.
No, if the worst comes to the worst, rest assured we will put out a very, very tasteful, clickbaity highlights reel with some really mournful music. Going, Rob Campbell, R.I.P. We'll find out whatever day you were born, and you've told us the day you're going to die now. So
yeah. I'm going to go on Twitter and write a tweet that says, Rob Campbell, you're a good guy, smiley face, and I'm going to delete the smiley face and just leave it as it is.
Oh, yeah, nice. That's the edit function. Yeah, look, guys, it's not going to be that kind of, I'll be okay.
On that note, Campbell, thank you so much for joining us.
No problems, guys. Thanks.
Dara Carney, thanks as usual.
Yeah, we have.
All right, thanks, guys.
We have our perfect last clip for the Rob Campbell in memoriam tribute. Rob just going, "Yeah, I'll be okay."
This is taking a turn for the worse.